Stop scrolling for 30 seconds. I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound like the opposite of what you're feeling right now. The closed door, the rejection email, the relationship that ended without warning, the job that fell through at the last minute, the diagnosis, the delay, the disappointment. What if none of it was working against you? What if every single one of those moments, the ones that made you cry in your car, the ones that kept you up at 3 in the morning replaying what you should have said, what if every one of them was quietly, invisibly working for you?
I know how that sounds. Stay with me anyway. Because by the end of this, I'm going to give you one sentence. Just one, that you can say tonight before you fall asleep. And it will start to change the way your life responds to you. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. You'll know it when you hear it, because you'll feel it land somewhere underneath your ribs. But first, you need to understand why it works. This isn't about luck. This isn't about waiting. This isn't about chanting affirmations at a mirror while some part of you doesn't believe a word you're saying. This is about something far older, far quieter, and far more reliable than luck ever was.
And here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. The people who seem to live charmed lives, the ones where things just keep working out, are not smarter than you, luckier than you, or more deserving than you. They simply stumbled, sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose, onto a different relationship with their own inner world. That's the entire difference. Not better circumstances. A different starting point on the inside, which quietly produced better circumstances as a result. So let's begin. Somewhere along the way, most of us were handed a story about how life works. The story goes like this. The world is out there, fixed and solid, and you are in here, small and reactive, doing your best to survive whatever the world throws at you. Good things happen to other people because they got lucky, born in the right place, knew the right person, caught the right break. Bad things happen to you because that's just how it goes sometimes. It's a convincing story. Most of the people around you believe it completely. And if you believe it too, it will keep proving itself right, over and over, for the rest of your life.
But there's another story. An older one. A quieter one.
It doesn't get taught in school, and it rarely gets mentioned at the dinner table. But it has been whispered, hinted at, and lived out by a small number of people in every generation. The ones who somehow keep landing on their feet. The ones whose lives seem to bend in their direction, even after everything falls apart. That story says this. The outer conditions of your life are not the cause of anything. They are the effect. They are the visible echo of something invisible that happened first, inside you, often without your noticing. Your circumstances are not pushing on you from the outside in. They are being pulled out from the inside, out. And if that's true, if your outer life really is just a reflection of an inner state, then the closed doors were never random. They were responses. Responses to something you were assuming, believing, or feeling on the inside, whether you meant to or not. This is not a comfortable idea at first. It can feel like blame. It isn't. It's the opposite of blame. Blame says, this happened to you, and there's nothing you can do. This says, this happened through you, which means you hold more power over the next chapter than you have ever been told. That's not a punishment. That's the best news you'll hear all year. So let's go deeper into how this actually works. Not as a theory, but as something you can test in your own life starting tonight. The room where your whole life begins. Picture for a moment that you have a private room no one else can enter. No camera can film it, no friend can visit it, no employer can inspect it. It exists only for you, and you spend more time in it than anywhere else on earth, even though most people never notice they're standing inside it at all. That room is your imagination. Most people think of imagination as something soft, daydreams, fantasy, the opposite of real life. But look closer and you'll notice something strange. Every single thing you have ever built, worn, driven, or lived inside of began as a picture in someone's private room before it became a fact in the shared one. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're watching this on, the building outside your window, none of it existed in the outer world first. It existed as an image, held with feeling, inside a person's imagination, and only afterward did it harden into wood, metal, glass, and stone. If that's true for chairs and buildings, why would it stop being true for the shape of your life? Here is the part most people miss. You are not just having images in that private room. You are living in it, constantly, almost every waking minute. And what you rehearse there sets the tone for what shows up out here. If you spend your private moments rehearsing the conversation where someone disappoints you, you are, in a very real sense, building that conversation, brick by brick, before it ever happens. If you spend your quiet moments picturing the relief of finally hearing good news, you are laying down the early architecture of that relief, long before any phone call confirms it. This is not about positive thinking in the shallow sense, gritting your teeth and forcing a smile while everything in you screams otherwise. This is about something more precise. It's about noticing what you are assuming to be true about your life when no one is watching, and recognizing that this private, repeated assumption is the actual blueprint your outer life is quietly built from. Most people never examine that room. They let whatever fear, worry, or old wound wandered in during childhood sit there, unexamined, running the show for decades. And then they wonder why the same disappointing pattern keeps finding them in different clothes, different cities, different relationships. You are about to become someone who examines the room. And once you do, you'll notice something almost everyone else misses entirely. The room was never empty, and it was never silent. It has been running, quietly, your whole life, whether you were paying attention to it or not. The only question now is whether you'll keep letting it run on autopilot, or whether you'll finally start directing it on purpose. 2 words that quietly run your life. There are 2 words you use more than any others. You've used them today already, probably dozens of times without noticing. You used them in your head before you even got out of bed. I am. Everything you attach after those 2 words becomes an instruction, not a wish, not a hope, an instruction given to the same deep, obedient part of you that grows your fingernails and beats your heart without being asked. That part of you does not argue with your conclusions. It does not check whether your conclusions are kind or fair or even accurate. It simply accepts whatever you hand it after I am, and it gets to work making your outer life agree with it. I am always the one who gets left behind. I am bad with money. I am the kind of person nothing works out for. Say a sentence like that enough times, with enough feeling behind it, and you are not describing your life. You are issuing orders to it. And the strange, almost uncomfortable truth is that this deep part of you is not interested in making you happy. It is only interested in making you right. If you have decided, deep down, that you are the kind of person nothing works out for, then some quiet, obedient mechanism inside you will go looking for evidence to keep you correct. Turning down the opportunity that didn't fit the story, picking the partner who confirms the old wound, missing the open door because your eyes were trained to look for closed ones. This is why willpower alone so rarely changes a life. You can grit your teeth and try harder, work longer, push through. But if underneath all that effort, your private sentence is still, I am the kind of person nothing works out for, you are rowing a boat with the engine running in reverse. So here is the work. Not motivation, not hustle, editing. Tonight, and every night from now on, I want you to catch the sentence that follows I am when you are tired, honest, and the mask is off. Don't judge it, just notice it. That sentence, more than your resume, more than your bank statement, more than your relationship status, is the actual architect of your life. And the moment you see it clearly, you gain the one thing you need to begin changing it: choice. The secret most people walk right past here is something almost nobody tells you, and it's the hinge this entire video swings on. It is not enough to think a new thought. You can sit and recite, I am wealthy, I am loved, I am successful 1,000 times a day, and if it stays only in your head, a sentence with no weight behind it, almost nothing will move. Thought alone is cheap, it costs you nothing, and so it changes nothing. What actually moves the deep, obedient part of you? The part that quietly arranges your circumstances to match your conclusions is feeling. Not the feeling you perform for other people. The feeling you privately, secretly, know to be true about yourself when you're alone. This is the part people skip, because feeling can't be faked the way words can. You can say, I am confident, in a flat, hollow voice, and feel nothing behind it. And your inner world will register the flatness, not the words. But the moment you can actually feel, even for 60 honest seconds, what it would feel like to already have the thing you want, you have done something words alone could never do. You have given your deep self an experience to file away as real. Think about how memory works. Your inner world doesn't actually distinguish very well between something you vividly imagined with feeling and something you actually lived. That's why a bad dream can leave your heart pounding when you wake up, even though nothing in the room ever moved. That's why remembering an old embarrassment can make your face flush years later, in a context that has nothing to do with the original event. Feeling is the language your deep self speaks fluently. Words are just the accent. So the real practice isn't think positive, it's this. Find a quiet moment, close your eyes, and instead of thinking about the good outcome, feel what it would be like to already be standing inside it. Not someday, now. What does it feel like in your chest, your shoulders, your breathing, to already have the relief, the security, the love, the answer you've been waiting for? Stay there, even for 2 minutes. Let the feeling be real, not performed.
This is the sentence I promised you at the start, and you've probably already guessed the shape of it, even if the exact words are still forming. It isn't a sentence you say, it's a feeling you visit. And once you understand that distinction, you stop chasing affirmations that never land, and you start doing the one thing that actually moves the needle, living as if it has already happened. There is a particular kind of relief on the face of someone who just got the news they were hoping for. The shoulders drop, the breath goes long and slow, something in the eyes softens like a held weight has finally been set down. You've seen that look on other people. You may even remember the last time it was on you. Here is the question almost nobody asks. What if you could borrow that exact feeling before the news arrives, instead of waiting for the news to grant you permission to feel it? This is what it means to live as though the thing you want has already happened, not pretending in a way that ignores your real circumstances, and not lying to yourself about what's currently true on the outside. It's something more specific than that. It's choosing in your private imagination to rehearse the relief, the gratitude, the calm certainty of the outcome you want, instead of endlessly rehearsing the anxiety of not having it yet. Most people do the opposite without realizing it. They wait for proof before they allow themselves to feel good. I'll relax once I get the offer. I'll feel secure once the money's in the account. I'll feel loved once they say it first. On the surface, this seems sensible. Why would you celebrate before you've won? But remember what we covered a moment ago. Your deep self responds to feeling, not to facts. If you insist on feeling anxious and lacking until the outer proof arrives, you are training your inner world to keep producing more situations that match anxious and lacking. You are, without meaning to, demanding more evidence for the very story you're trying to escape. Living in the end means flipping that order. You borrow the feeling of the outcome first, briefly, privately, sincerely, and you let the outer proof catch up to it later, the way the rest of nature already works. The seed doesn't wait for the tree to prove itself before it starts growing. The acorn doesn't need a forest to validate that it's allowed to become an oak. It simply assumes its nature and grows accordingly. The proof comes after the assumption, never before. This doesn't mean you stop taking real action in the real world. It means the action you take stops coming from a place of desperate proving and starts coming from a place of quiet certainty. Which, by the way, is also why it tends to work better. People are drawn to certainty. Doors tend to open more easily for someone who isn't pushing on them with both hands and all their fear. Try this tonight. Pick one outcome you want. Not 10, just one. Close your eyes. Don't picture the steps it would take to get there. Picture the moment after it's already true. The phone call already happened. The relationship is already steady. The money is already in the account. Feel the specific, quiet relief of that moment for a few minutes, as genuinely as you can. Then open your eyes and go on with your evening. That's it. That's the practice. Small, repeated, sincere. The practice you do right before you sleep. There is a reason almost every wisdom tradition on earth, in some form or another, pays close attention to the moments right before sleep. It isn't superstition. It's because the state your mind enters as you drift off, relaxed, unguarded, no longer defended by the busy, analytical chatter of the day, is the state in which suggestion sinks deepest. Whatever you're feeling in those last few minutes tends to set the emotional tone the deep self carries through the night and into the next day. Most people waste this window without knowing it. They scroll a feed full of other people's highlight reels and quietly compare. They replay an argument from earlier, rehearsing the things they wish they'd said. They worry about tomorrow's to-do list. In other words, the last feeling they hand themselves before 8 hours of uninterrupted inner processing is often anxiety, comparison, or rehearsed conflict. And then they wonder why they wake up already behind. Here is a far better use of those last few minutes. Before you sleep tonight, instead of reaching for your phone, do something almost nobody teaches you. Revise your day. Think back over the last 12 or so hours. If something happened that bothered you, a sharp word, a missed opportunity, a moment you wish had gone differently, don't relive it as it actually occurred. Instead, in your imagination, replay it the way you wish it had gone. If someone was short with you, picture the conversation going warmly instead. If you missed a chance to speak up, picture yourself speaking up, clearly and calmly, and being heard. You're not lying to yourself about the facts of the day that already happened. You're doing something more useful. You're declining to let an unwanted scene be the last emotional note you hand to your deep self before sleep. Then, after revising whatever needs revising, spend the last few minutes simply resting in the feeling of the outcome you're working toward from the section before this one. Not the worry, not the to-do list, just the quiet, settled feeling of already having what you've been asking for. Do this consistently, and something interesting tends to happen over weeks and months.
The tone of your day starts to shift, not because the facts of the world rearrange themselves overnight, but because the emotional instructions you've been handing your deep self every single night have changed. And your deep self, remember, takes its instructions seriously. It has been listening to your nightly sentence this whole time. It's simply been waiting for you to choose a better one. Why the detour was never a mistake. Let's go back to where we started. The closed doors, the rejections, the delays that felt at the time like the universe getting it wrong.
Here is a reframe worth sitting with. Nothing that has happened to you so far has actually closed off your favor. It has only redirected the route your favor was always going to take. Think about a job you didn't get, one that, at the time, felt devastating. Now look at where you are. Often, not always, but often, you can trace a quiet thread from that disappointment to something better that could only have arrived because the first door stayed shut. The relationship that ended badly cleared the way for the one that actually fit. The plan that collapsed forced a pause that, in hindsight, was exactly the pause you needed, even though you would never have chosen it on purpose.
This isn't a claim that every hardship is secretly painless, or that pain doesn't matter. Real loss is real, and nothing here is meant to minimize grief or suffering, or to suggest you should rush past it. But there is a difference between honoring pain and living inside the belief that it proves life is against you. One is healthy. The other quietly recruits your deep self into producing more of the same. Consider this instead. What if every closed door was simply your inner self protecting an outcome that hadn't fully formed yet? What if the timing that frustrated you was the very thing that allowed the bigger version of your favor to assemble itself behind the scenes, out of view, the way a meal needs time in the oven before it's ready to serve? You wouldn't pull a dish out halfway through and call the recipe broken. You'd trust the process because you understand how ovens work. Most people don't extend life the same trust because they were taught that the outer world is the primary thing and they are simply along for the ride. But you now understand something different. You understand that the outer world is the echo, not the source. So when a door closes, instead of asking, "Why does nothing work out for me?" you can start asking a much more useful question. What assumption was I carrying when this began? And what would it feel like to carry a better one going forward? That single shift in the question you ask yourself, repeated over time, quietly changes the kind of doors that start opening. The 5-minute practice that changes the pattern. Let's make all of this practical. Understanding a principle is worth very little if it never becomes a habit. So here is a simple structure, 5 minutes a day, that pulls everything we've covered into one short, repeatable routine. First, notice the sentence. Sometime during your day, your commute, your shower, the walk to get coffee, catch what tends to follow "I am" in your unguarded moments. Don't fight it, just notice it with curiosity, the way a scientist notices data. Awareness always comes before change. Second, choose the replacement. Pick one sentence you'd rather be true. Keep it believable enough that some part of you can lean into it, even if it isn't fully true yet. Not "I am a millionaire," if that feels like a lie that makes you flinch. Something closer to "I am someone things are starting to work out for," tends to land with more honesty and, ironically, more power. Third, find the feeling, not just the words. In a quiet moment, ideally right before sleep as we covered, spend 2 or 3 minutes not reciting the sentence, but feeling its outcome already true. The relief, the ease, the quiet confidence. Let your body relax into it the way it would if the good news had already arrived. Fourth, revise the day. Before sleep, glance back over anything that didn't go the way you wanted and replay it the better way in your imagination. Don't deny that the original version happened. Simply decline to let it be the last emotional note of your day. Fifth, release the outcome and act normally. This is the part people struggle with most because it feels like it shouldn't work. But trying to control the how and the when is often what blocks things the most. Plant the feeling, then go live your evening like a person who already knows it's handled. Not anxious checking, not constant monitoring. Quiet, settled trust, the same way you don't dig up a seed every hour to check if it's growing. 5 minutes, that's the entire practice. It will not look impressive from the outside. No one watching you will know anything is happening. But this is precisely how every meaningful shift in a life actually begins. Quietly, privately, invisibly, long before there's anything to show for it. The doubt that shows up right on schedule. I want to address something honestly, because if I don't, some part of you will tune out the rest of this. Right about now, a voice in your head is probably saying some version of, "This sounds nice, but my situation is different. I've tried thinking positive before. It didn't work." That voice isn't your enemy. It's actually a sign you're paying attention. But notice something about its timing.
It tends to show up exactly when an old assumption is being asked to loosen its grip. That's not a coincidence either. The deep, obedient part of you we've been talking about this whole time doesn't love being told its long-held conclusions were wrong. It will often produce a wave of doubt right at the threshold of change, almost like a final test, to see whether you actually mean it or whether you'll fold the moment resistance shows up. So here's what to do with the doubt, instead of arguing with it or pretending it isn't there. Let it speak, then ask it one quiet question. Has believing the old story actually made my life better? If the answer is no, and for most people watching this it is no, then you have nothing to lose by trying the new one with the same seriousness you once gave the old one. And about the people who say they've tried this before and it didn't work, in almost every case, when you look closely, what they tried was reciting words without ever touching the feeling underneath them. They said, "I am successful," in the same flat tone they'd use to read a grocery list, while privately, underneath it, still feeling the old, anxious certainty that nothing changes for them. Remember what we covered earlier. Your deep self listens to feeling first, words second. A sentence repeated without feeling is like a key that's almost the right shape. It won't turn the lock, and then people conclude the lock itself is broken, when really, they just needed to feel their way to the right key instead of force the wrong one. This isn't about eliminating doubt completely before you start. You don't need total, unwavering certainty on day one. You only need to be willing to practice anyway, consistently, the way you'd practice an instrument. Clumsily at first, then less clumsily, until one day the feeling you used to have to manufacture on purpose starts arriving on its own. There's one more thing worth saying about doubt, because it tends to get worse before it gets quiet. The first few days of practicing this, you may notice the old story getting louder, almost defensive, the way a room gets colder right before sunrise. That isn't proof the practice is failing. It's often the last static of an old station losing its signal. Stay with the new frequency a little longer than feels natural, and it tends to settle. The favor was never in question. Here is what I want you to walk away with. You were never excluded from good things happening to you. You were never the exception to the rule that life works out for some people but not others. What looked like exclusion was more often than not a private conversation running underneath your awareness, a sentence following "I am" that you never chose on purpose, a feeling you kept rehearsing without realizing you were rehearsing it, a closed door you decided meant never instead of not yet and not like this. None of that was your fault. Almost nobody is taught to look at their inner room. Almost nobody is told that feeling, not effort alone, is the language their deeper self actually listens to. You didn't fail at a game you were never taught the rules of. You're only now being handed the rule book. But from here forward, you do know. You know that the sentence after "I am" is an instruction, not a description. You know that feeling, sincerely visited, moves more than words alone ever could. You know that living in the end, borrowing the relief before the proof arrives, is not denial. It's the actual order in which things have always grown. You know that the moments before sleep are not wasted time but fertile time, and that revising your day is one of the simplest, most private forms of power available to you, free, every single night. And you know that the detours, the delays, the doors that closed before you understood why, were never proof that you were excluded from good things. They were simply redirection, clearing space for something your earlier assumptions weren't yet large enough to hold. Everything is working out in your favor. Not because life owes you ease, and not because nothing difficult will ever happen again, but because the same quiet mechanism that has been faithfully matching your outer life to your inner assumptions this entire time is still running, right now, as you watch this. It has never once stopped working. It was simply waiting for better instructions. You can give it those instructions tonight. If something in this landed for you, if some quiet part of you recognized this before I even finished saying it, that's not a coincidence. That's the part of you this whole video has been speaking to. Tonight, before you fall asleep, try the practice. Catch the sentence. Choose the replacement. Find the feeling, not just the words. Revise the day, and then let it go, the way you'd let go of a seed once it's already in the soil. If you want to go deeper into this way of seeing your life, stay close. There's more coming, and the next one builds directly on what you just learned here. Until then, remember the only line you really need to carry with you. You are not behind. You are not excluded. You are not the exception. Go back for a moment to the very start of this video. The closed door, the rejection email, the relationship that ended without warning. Notice that none of it has changed.
and yet something in how you're holding it already has. That's the whole point. The facts didn't need to move first. You did. Everything is working out in your favor, and tonight, you get to start proving it to yourself.